cry to me and answer you, hey, and announce to you, hey, great and firm things that you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3. The cry for help from the afflicted heart never goes unnoticed. Sometimes we carry burdens so heavy that words fail us, leaving only a silent cry or a deep sigh. But know that he who probes the innermost of our being is attentive, hearing even what we can't say, the scream you suppress inside you, the cry that no one sees. They are echoes that reach straight to the throne of the Eternal One, who is always ready to listen. He never gets tired of listening. Don't you get bored with the repetition of your pain because his love knows no bounds? When everything seems to collapse and despair tightens the chest, many think that it is necessary to pray in a beautiful or perfect way. But the truth is that the most powerful prayer is the one that comes from the sincere heart. It doesn't matter if the words come out confused, if there are tears mixed with the cry. What matters is that you speak, that you surrender, that you allow your cry for help to rise. The Eternal is not interested in elaborate speeches. He wants the authentic sound of his soul. In times of pain, it is common to feel alone, as if the echo of his voice were lost in the void. But there is a presence that never leaves you, even when you can't feel it. Heaven's silence does not mean no answer. Often the time of waiting is the soil where faith takes deep roots. The cry for help doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be true. The Eternal hears the groan of your heart, even when you cannot utter a word. If you feel that no one understands the weight of your pain, remember that there is a Comforter who knows every detail of your story before the word even reaches your mouth. He already knows what you need, but he wants to hear you. Because the act of clamoring is not just about being heard, it is also about opening up, pouring out, recognizing your fragility, and trusting that there is someone bigger taking care of everything. The cry for help is a bridge between your heart and the heart of the one who never fails. What prevents you from crying out today? The fear of being weak, the shame of your pain. There is no room for it before the one who formed you. It doesn't matter if your cry is a whisper or a desperate cry. What matters is that you don't keep to yourself what needs to be delivered. Talk, cry, scream, if necessary. The Eternal not only hears, but he cares. He's not far from your pain. He's closer than you think. Ready to hold his hand, the psalmist wrote, "This poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him and delivered him out of all his troubles." Psalm 34:6. This shows that the cry for help is not a sign of weakness, but of faith. It is the recognition that alone you cannot, but with him everything is possible. Your pain is not too small to be heard, nor too great to be resolved. The Eternal is an expert at turning tears into testimonies and despair into renewed hope. Sometimes help doesn't come the way we expect. It may not be an immediate response or a spectacular miracle, but he always answers. It can be through an inexplicable peace, a strength you didn't even know you had, a word that comes at the right time, a person that shows up to help. The important thing is to know that the cry was heard. His cry is never lost in the void. It echoes to the heart of the all-seeing one. Do not expect to have the strength to pray. Pray precisely because you do not have the strength. A cry for help is a plea for help. A sign that you recognize your need, and there is no shame in it, on the contrary, is an act of courage. To cry is to say, "I can't do it alone, but I trust that there is someone who can help me." And so, one who can, the one who created the heavens and the earth, also sustains his heart. Broken today if your heart is tight, if tears are inevitable, if despair wants to swallow you up. It doesn't have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be yours. The cry for help is a raw prayer, without filters, without masks. And it is precisely this prayer that touches the heart of the one who never abandons you. A cry for help does not need a specific place to be heard. It doesn't matter if you're in your room, at work, in the middle of the street, or even silently in his thought. The Eternal is not limited by space or time. He is present everywhere, hearing every cry, be it loud or silent. Sometimes we think we need to be in a sacred environment to be heard, but the true altar is within your heart. The sincere cry crosses any barrier and reaches straight to the heart of the one who cares for you. Remember that in the Bible, many cried out in times of deep distress and were heard. Jonah cried out from the belly of the great fish and was saved. Anna, with a bitter heart, prayed in silence, and her plea was heard. The blind Bartimaeus cried out in the crowd and received his sight. What do these examples show us? The cry for help has no formula. It can be a loud prayer, a whisper between tears, or a silent cry in the soul. What matters is that it's true. When you cry out and you're saying, "I need help," and that's an act of humility. In a world that values self-reliance, admitting that we can't do it alone is an attitude of courage. It is not easy to recognize our weakness, but that is when help comes. The strength of the Eternal is perfected in our weakness as we try to solve everything with our own hands. The burden seems unbearable, but when we surrender, when we cry out, we find rest. Crying is also an exercise of faith. You are talking to someone who cannot see with the physical eyes, but who feels with the heart. Does this faith move mountains? No, because you have gigantic faith. But because the Eternal is powerful to act. The power is not in the intensity of his cry, but in the certainty that he is listening. Even if your faith is small, like a grain of mustard seed, it is enough to make the impossible happen. It's important to remember that help doesn't always come the way we expect. Sometimes the Eternal changes the situation, other times he changes our heart to face it. Shouting is not a magic formula to erase problems, but it is a way to find peace, even in the midst of the storm. The true miracle may be the transformation that happens within you while you wait. Peace that surpasses all understanding is often the most powerful response. The silence after the outcry can be hard to bear, but it doesn't mean you haven't been heard. The Eternal works even in silence. He's working behind the scenes of your life, organizing what you can't see. The answer may be on the way, even if you don't realize it yet. Trust the process. Its timing is perfect, and what today seems like a delay, tomorrow will be understood as a care. While you wait for the answer, keep shouting. Persistence in prayer is not an empty repetition, but a demonstration of confidence is to say, "I know help will come, even if I don't see it yet." Jesus himself taught us to pray without ceasing, to seek to knock and cry out with perseverance. Not because the Eternal needs to be convinced, but because we need this constant connection to keep hope alive. The cry for help is not only a request, it is also an outpouring of the soul at times. Just talking brings relief. Opening your heart, exposing your pain, crying without reservation before the one who understands you deeply is a form of healing. You don't have to hide your weaknesses or be afraid to show your wounds. The Eternal is not frightened by your pain. He welcomes, cares for, and transforms. And when help arrives, because it will, remember to give thanks. Gratitude is a way of acknowledging that you were never alone, even when it seemed like it was. It strengthens the heart and reminds us that in every detail there was care. The cry for help is the beginning of a dialogue that transforms, and the answer, whatever it may be, will always come loaded with love that never fails. A cry for help is often the beginning of a new journey. When you cry out to something inside you, it changes. It's not just a plea for the problem to go away, but an awakening to a new perspective. The cry leads us to see that even in the midst of pain, there is a purpose. The Eternal does not waste suffering. He turns every tear into a seed of growth. Despair, which today seems unbearable, can be the fertile soil where tomorrow's hope will flourish. There are moments when the cry for help seems to be an echo in the void. You pray, you cry, you plead, and heaven remains silent. Silence is not absence. Silence can be a response, an invitation to trust beyond circumstances. It is in this space between the cry and the response that faith is strengthened. The Eternal is present even when you don't feel it. He's acting even when you don't see his silence. It's never an abandonment. It's a mystery that will make sense later. Do not underestimate the power of your cry. What you consider a whisper can be a mighty cry to the ears of the All-Powerful. The Eternal knows the intensity of your pain, even when you cannot express it with words. The Apostle Paul reminds us that the Spirit intercedes for us with inexpressible groans. This means that even when your voice fails, your soul is still being heard. Heaven understands the language of tears, sighs, deep silences. When you feel that your strength is at an end, remember that help does not come from your ability to cry out eloquently, but from the certainty that there is someone who hears. The psalmist said, "I lift up mine eyes to the mountains. Whence shall my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth." Psalm 121:12. Help does not come from where we expect, nor does it always come in the way we desire. But it always comes from the right place, from the inexhaustible source of love and grace. The cry is also an act of surrender. When you scream for help, you're saying, "I don't control everything," and that's liberating. Recognizing that you need help doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Society teaches us to hide our weaknesses, but the Eternal invites us to expose them, because it is in vulnerability that it manifests its strength. The cry for help is the first step to letting go of pride and allowing real help to reach you. Sometimes help comes disguised as simplicity. Don't just expect great miracles. Pay attention to the little signs, a word from a friend, a verse that catches your eye, an inexplicable peace in the midst of chaos. All of this may be the answer you are looking for. The Eternal speaks in many ways, and the cry opens our ears to hear him. The problem is not that he does not respond. Often we are the ones who do not recognize the answer. The cry for help also connects us with others. When you share your pain, you discover that you are not alone. The Apostle James teaches us to pray for one another, because there is power in the intersection. The collective cry has a special force. When two or more people join together in prayer, the heavens move in an extraordinary way. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Sometimes the help you need is in the prayer of someone who cares about you. Even when help doesn't come as you expected, know that you are being sustained. The fact that you are here reading these words is proof that you have survived difficult days. The Eternal has sustained you, even when it looked like it wasn't. Every new day is a response. Every breath is a sign that there is still purpose. The cry for help is not the end of hope. It is the beginning of a new story. Never forget that the Eternal never gets tired of listening to you. No matter how many times you need to cry out, he will be there, listening with patience and love. His heart is always open to receive your pain, your doubts, your fears. The cry for help is a powerful prayer because it comes from the naked soul without masks. And it is precisely in this honesty that grace finds space to act, heal, and restore. When the cry for help finally finds an answer, we often don't realize it right away. help sometimes comes in a subtle way. Almost imperceptible as a gradual relief in the weight of the soul, a breath of hope in the midst of despondency, the Eternal acts not only with thunder and visible miracles, he also manifests himself in the gentle breeze that soothes the heart. Therefore, it is important to keep the heart sensitive and attentive, recognizing its care in details that at first glance may seem small. The cry is a bridge between despair and hope. When you cry out, you are crossing that bridge, even if with shaky and tired steps. The Eternal One hears every word, every groan, and works not only to change circumstances, but also to transform you. The greatest miracle may not be the end of the storm, but the peace that is born within you, while the storm still roars around you. The cry is not just a cry for help, it is an encounter with the consolation you so need. It is important to remember that as you cry out, there is a purpose being built, even if you do not understand it now. Suffering, though painful, can be fertile ground for the growth of faith. The Apostle Paul, even facing arrest and persecution, said, "Because when I am weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians 12:10. And it teaches us that in the moments when we feel most vulnerable, we can experience the strength that comes not from ourselves, but from the constant care of the Eternal. When help seems delayed, the heart may be filled with doubts. Is he listening to me? Does my cry matter? But the truth is that waiting does not mean abandonment. The time of the Eternal is different from ours. What today seems like a delay, tomorrow will be understood as protection, preparation, or even deliverance. The Eternal is never late. He answers at the right time, in the right way, even if it seems hard to understand now. The cry for help also teaches us to depend more than ever on his presence. When all human solutions fail, when doors close and forces run out, that's when we discover that true help comes from on high. Despair can push us into the arms of the one who has always been there, waiting for the moment when we would surrender completely. The cry is often the beginning of a deeper and more sincere relationship with the Eternal. Even if help doesn't come the way you expect, it will always bring something good. It can be a lesson, a maturation, an inner strengthening. The Eternal does not waste suffering. He transforms pains into testimonies, wounds into marks of overcoming, tears into seeds of hope. What hurts today, tomorrow may be the reason why you will become a source of comfort to others, the cry for help. It is the beginning of a transformation that goes beyond the immediate and reaches the Eternal. The cry also reveals who we are. In moments of despair, the masks fall, and we show ourselves how fragile, needy, dependent we really are. But it is precisely in this honesty that the Eternal finds us. He doesn't expect perfection, he expects sincerity. The broken and contrite heart is what touches him the most. Don't be afraid to present yourself as you are. With all their pains, failures, and doubts, the Eternal draws near to hearts that are not afraid to be vulnerable before him. If you feel that you have cried out so much that your prayers no longer make a difference, remember if Jesus himself in Gethsemane cried out in anguish, and heaven was silent for a moment. But the purpose was being served. Sometimes silence is part of a bigger plan that we can't see yet. The important thing is not to stop crying. The cry for help is a sign that there is still faith, however small, and that faith is sufficient to move the heart of the Eternal. While you wait for an answer, don't isolate yourself. Share your pain with people you trust. Seek support in faith communities. Allow others to pray with you and for you. The help of the Eternal can also come through the hands and words of those around you. It is not weakness to ask for help. It is wisdom to recognize that we need each other. The collective cry has a special power. for it unites hearts in the same purpose, creating a current of faith and hope. The cry for help is proof that you still believe there is a way out. Even if you can't see now, the Eternal is an expert in paths where there is no path, in answers where everything seems lost. Keep crying out, keep believing, because help is on the way. And when He arrives, you will understand that every tear shed, every word whispered in prayer, every desperate cry has been heard, valued, and answered with a love that never fails. If this message spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share with someone who also needs to hear that help is closer than you think. Leave your comment telling how this word reached you, and if you want, write your prayer request. Let us intercede for you together. Enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive more empowering messages. Faith and renew hope. Remember, if you are never alone, your cry for help has already been heard, and help is on the way. May the peace that calms all storms fill your heart today. See you next time.